There are so many reasons why I wanted mousepiforhire to succeed. Beyond its unique identity, Fumi Games' debut title attempts to combine genres we've never really seen together. Rubber hose animation, 1930s noir film influences, and the gameplay of Doom. The ambition is undeniable, but it's not all sunshine and fondue. Once the novelty melts away, what's left is a generic boomer shooter that overstays its welcome. None of this is to say that Mouse is bad. On the other hand, the gunplay is solid. The over-the-top animations sell the power of every weapon, like separating enemy heads from their all-too-fragile bodies with a shotgun. I'm telling you, that never gets old. The acid-lobbing grenade launcher does exactly what it promises to, dissolving enemies' skin to reveal their skeletons before reducing them to ash. The gameplay loop is also exactly what you'd expect. Enter an area, kill the enemies, find the switch, and move on. Mouse also ups the ante with memorable boss encounters, like the third wife. She's a vengeful ghost who mistakes you for her ex-husband and sends waves of gun-wielding skeletons your way. She ends up being one of the game's highlights. Fumi Games also spared no expense with the voice acting. Troy Baker, possibly gaming's most prolific voice actor, plays our protagonist, Jack Pepper, and he delivers a thick, hard-boiled detective accent that sets the mood appropriately without ever feeling cheesy. One of Mouse's more unique spins on this genre is the inclusion of a story. We're investigating the disappearance of a magician while navigating the politically corrupt world of Mouseburg and its disturbing shrew trafficking underground. Along the way, we expose corrupt politicians, see nods to the rise of fascism, and report our findings to both friends and a journalist. We take the clues we find along the way and pin them to a detective board, complete with string and thumbtacks. The problem is that you never actually do any real detective work. You don't solve puzzles or piece together clues yourself. Mouse, at its core, is still a boomer shooter, and the investigative elements end up feeling more like elaborate set dressing than anything else. I'd be more forgiving if I could empathize with any of the characters. Despite Jack Pepper's near constant internal dialogue, I couldn't tell you anything meaningful about him. He's hard-boiled, he wears a trench coat, and he fought in the war. But those traits alone don't make for an interesting character, and Jack never grows beyond them. Characters are only as good as the world they're placed in, and all the traditional noir elements are here. Monologues, femme fatales, and a city so corrupt it feels almost impossible to change. It's easy to understand Jack's motivation then. He wants to make Mouseburg a better place. But no story beat ever tugged on my heartstrings, and no line of dialogue brought me closer to caring about his allies either. Boomer shooters aren't exactly known for their gripping narratives though, and most tell their stories through audio logs for a reason. But Mouse had the chance to do something special. The developers even went through the trouble of building a small hub world that you return to after each mission, which gives you the chance to talk to recurring characters like the upcoming mayoral candidate and friend of Jack's, a local bar owner trying to help the underserved shrew community, and a weapons specialist who upgrades your gear before the next mission. But none of them ever say anything worthwhile. Where are the flashbacks that help us understand how they all got here? Where are the stories about the times they had each other's backs in the war? And, quite frankly, where are their motivations for doing any of this to begin with? At the end of the day, each character boils down to a piece of wobbling furniture, handing out superfluous side quests. It's also made worse by how static they are. Their mouths move when they speak, but the lip sync never feels right to me, and they rarely emote beyond a handful of canned animations. I might be taking this too seriously, because if Mouse is one thing, it's a game that doesn't take itself too seriously. The cheese puns never become grating, but they never gave me a smirk or a laugh either. As a player, I can feel the ambition, but more often than not, the shortcomings were impossible to ignore. Combat follows a similar pattern. All the modern boomer shooter elements are here: fast movement, double jumping, wall running, and swinging across the map. But then you're given the ability to hover in midair using your mouse tail. Quite frankly, a baffling decision that effectively pauses the action. Instead of maintaining your momentum, you're left gliding through the air practically in slow motion, while enemies pepper you with bullets. It takes whatever flow the combat has and throws up a big red stop sign. The same applies to climbing ladders. Every time you reach one, you have to stop and press a button before Jack begins climbing. It's a small annoyance, but one I found frustrating enough to fix with mods. At least the enemy roster is varied and in line with contemporary boomer shooter games that we've seen over the past few years. Flying enemies constantly chip away at your health if you're not watching the skies. Sniper mice can pick you off from a distance if you don't close the gap. And melee enemies, tanks, and the standard soldier enemies are also here too. Annoyingly though, the combat only clicked for me during the final stretch of the game. Suddenly I had to prioritize targets, manage my movement carefully, and constantly swap weapons instead of simply pushing forward without much thought. Speaking of pacing issues, it also struck me as strange that the developers waited until the last few levels to introduce a ledge-grabbing mechanic, something that would have improved the flow of combat and exploration from the very beginning. So, in my opinion, while the FPS foundations are solid, Mouse struggles to stand out in an increasingly crowded genre. Scroll through Steam right now, and you'll find plenty of its contemporaries that are simply more satisfying to play. Not every boomer shooter needs to live up to the heights of Doom, but it's frustrating how close Mouse gets to earning a place alongside the genre's standouts before falling just short of it. Where Mouse does separate itself, though, is its visual identity. The black and white presentation immediately grabs you, and it's undoubtedly one of the biggest reasons the game generated so much interest before launch. United by the monochromatic color palette are characters, enemies, weapons, and the user interface, which are all rendered in a rubber hose animation style. Unlike Cuphead, however, where virtually every frame is hand-drawn, Mouse uses traditional 3D rendering for its environments and many of its in-game objects. The contrast between animated characters and the 3D world is interesting, but it also creates a few visual oddities. For example, when playing in ultrawide, certain weapon animations remain locked to a traditional 16:9 widescreen aspect ratio instead of filling the entire display. City skylines and distant backgrounds often appear noticeably blurry or pixelated, which clashes with the otherwise hand-drawn aesthetic. Even the cutscenes, despite looking hand-animated, have a deliberate pixelization effect layered over them that makes them feel lower resolution than they probably should be. There's also an aggressive vignette that I couldn't disable without resorting to mods. For much of my playthrough, the visual presentation never quite matched my expectations. The black and white aesthetic is undeniably striking, but after several hours it began to lose some of its novelty. The level design didn't help it either. There are some fantastic locations, dockside bars, movie sets, circuses, but after a while they begin to blend together. Again, the black and white presentation is a core part of the game's identity, but a little more visual variety could have helped distinguish each environment. Only a handful of locations, as a result, truly stood apart to me. Descending into Hell was one of them. Another one was capturing a talking brain during a surreal hallucination and turning it into a weapon. Ironically, one of the game's most visually interesting locations, a full-color movie set, is saved until almost the last moment of the campaign, offering a glimpse at what the game's art direction might have looked like if it had progressed earlier into that color format. Another puzzling decision is the inclusion of an old-school overworld map. Between missions, you drive Jack's car around from an isometric point of view, selecting different locations to start each level. I had mixed feelings about this. For a small developer, it feels like an odd place to spend development resources. It does let you revisit previous levels at any time, but nothing about the overworld is particularly engaging, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they could have better invested their time elsewhere. Boss encounters are equally inconsistent. Aside from the third wife, which I mentioned earlier, I struggled to enjoy most of the other boss fights. The best example is the Gatling gun-wielding gator in the sewers. He patrols a small grid of shipping crates, stopping to unload a barrage of bullets into you and then moves into another position and repeats the process. The solution for the player is simple: hide behind a crate, wait for him to relocate, and fire back when he's not looking. He occasionally summons smaller groups of gators to up the pressure, but the encounter never really evolves beyond that. It doesn't feel especially creative or challenging. It just feels like another bullet sponge that soaks up more ammo than it deserves. Mouse already proved it could design memorable boss encounters, which makes this all the more frustrating. And that's my common theme with Mouse. There's a lot to like here. but very little to love. And as a result, this game never really lives up to the ambition of its ideas. More than anything, that's what defines Mouse PI for Hire for me. Whether it's the detective premise, the hub world, the movement mechanics, or the boss encounters, Mouse is full of concepts that feel like they're only 1 or 2 iterations away from being genuinely fantastic. One thing that never disappointed me, though, was the soundtrack. For a genre known for memorable music, Mouse PI for Hire absolutely delivers. Its lively jazz score sets the tone beautifully. During combat, the music matches the pace, and when you're wandering Mouseburg piecing together clues, it settles into a smooth melody that perfectly captures the noir atmosphere you're looking for. Even after I finished playing, I found myself putting the soundtrack on repeat, also while writing this review. I kept pushing through Mouse, waiting for the moment when all of these disconnected ideas would finally click into place. Unfortunately, that moment never came. Despite this, I genuinely want this game to succeed, and I hope Fumi Games gets the opportunity to make a sequel. The foundation is here. The creativity is also here. But what's missing is the execution needed to tie all those great ideas together. But that's enough from me. Now I want to hear from all of you. Have you played Mouse PI for Hire? Do you think I'm being too hard on the game? And what would you want to see from a sequel? Let me know down in the comments, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.